A Jack Eichel trade to the Golden Knights appears to be getting even closer, and we could almost call the deal imminent. It could happen this weekend. We're also taking a look at some goaltending trade options for the Edmonton Oilers. We have a waiver claim and some more developments on the scandal with the Chicago Blackhawks. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with the latest updates on the incident involving Kyle Beach, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the whole scandal that's been kind of dominating the headlines here for the past few days. So we do know a few more things here. Obviously, we talked about the fact that Kevin Cheveldayoff has been cleared and will not be facing any discipline from the league or his team or anything at all. He and his owner, Marc Chipman in Winnipeg, will be holding a media conference first of the week, and they'll be talking about things and kind of explaining a little bit more as to why Cheveldayoff is, I guess, getting some different treatment here than everybody else. He's the only one that was in the room for that meeting when they discussed about, holding off on proceeding with anything on those claims that Kyle Beach had made to the team. Everybody else is out of a job. Cheveldayoff, not disciplined. So they'll be discussing that further. So we should hear more on that. Kyle Beach did have his meeting with Gary Bettman. He asked some pretty tough questions, like why the league didn't investigate themselves. Why did they allow the Blackhawks to investigate essentially themselves? The answer from Bettman was essentially that they were comfortable with the law firm that was hired to do it. They were obviously comfortable with the fact that they could review everything after the investigation was complete, before everything was made public. And on that front, they were also kind of talked a lot about a few other things and preventing things from the future ever happening again. Bettman certainly offered some support, but there's still, I think, lots of questions that will come from that meeting. There's going to be a lot going on with the NHLPA over this as well. There is an executive meeting scheduled for first of the week as well, which is going to be the executive board for the PA, and all 32 team reps are going to be allowed to participate. Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts tonight was talking about the fact that they wouldn't necessarily always get all 32 players from all teams showing up to all meetings like that. It depends on what's being discussed. But right now, the players are pretty angry about the PA failing Kyle Beach and everything that went happen. A lot of agents are upset because obviously they want to make sure their players that they represent are protected and are getting the right support. And there's a lot of questions here. And even PA Director Donald Fair's future is certainly up for grabs. They outlined the fact that if they want to discuss his role as leader, that they can hold a meeting and there can be an executive board vote. They need 18 out of 20 votes, I guess, to proceed with kind of like a non-confidence vote. It is also possible that Don Fair may even offer to resign, but he might resign, at a future date, and kind of start the process to form like a transition period, just to make sure that there's no, kind of chaotic period within the union. There's a lot of people concerned about that with everything going on. If it's too big and too quick of a shakeup, will there be utter chaos for a little while? And they want to avoid that as well. So they have to be careful here while removing people that were guilty of not supporting the players and covering up the scandal. Obviously, there's, at the same time, they have to do things right. So we'll see how this fallout continues, but it is certainly quite possible that Director of the PA, Donald Fair, could end up on the outs. One name that was mentioned by Jeff Merrick as a potential replacement, should things go down that road, would be former NHL player Matthew Schneider, who has been very heavily involved with the NHLPA for quite some time. So as I mentioned before, this is not the last we've heard of this. There will be much more, and the fallout continues as everything tries to move forward here and get more answers. There's still a lot to be settled before this case stops dominating the news headlines. Of course, a couple other items here quickly as well. Sidney Crosby's making a return tonight for the Penguins, so he's finally back. That's always good for the game, good for the Penguins, good for the league. We also had a waiver claim today. The Vegas Golden Knights claimed Maple Leaf forward Michael Amadio, who was placed on waivers yesterday, so he's off to Vegas. Vegas is already in Toronto ahead of their scheduled game coming up here later this week. So we'll see what Vegas does. Obviously, they're not far from Amadio, so easy for him to meet up with his new team. And there is some wondering if maybe him being claimed could even be linked to the potential Eichel trade, which we're going to get into here momentarily. But Vegas is a very, very active, trying to sort things out and get ready for, I guess they want to win that Stanley Cup pretty bad. So, they're busy trying to prepare early to get a jump head start here on, some potential deals. They have lots of injuries going on, and we know just how aggressive that they've been here since they've been into the league. Now, as I mentioned, we have some trade rumors on two fronts I want to take a look at here. We know that the Edmonton Oilers have been linked to some goaltending changes in the past. We talked before about the connection to Jonas Korpisalo. There's been some rumors that he's a goalie they've had their eye on dating back to last year. And with the situation in Columbus and Elvis being the clear-cut number one, at least based on his contract and how he's played, I think it's fair to say that Korpisalo likely becomes expendable for them this year, and it could be finally a deal that's executed to get him to Edmonton. They very well might be willing to take on the last little bit of the contract here, Mikko Koskinen, to make that happen, and it might be something that works well for Edmonton especially. They'd obviously have to add something more to the deal than Koskinen, but it certainly gets their upgrade heading towards the latter part of the season into the playoffs. Now, new article in The Athletic from Jonathan Willis looking at some other options, one being John Gibson in Anaheim, the other, a very interesting name, last year's Vezina Trophy winner, Marc-Andre Fleury, and I think Fleury is a more interesting option of the two, just because it might be easier to pull off. I mean, Gibson might be a better solution longer term, but at this point, we don't know 100% that Anaheim definitely wants to trade him. But with Chicago having an absolutely disastrous start and everything going off the ice, I will not be one bit surprised if we see the Blackhawks unload Fleury, if he's willing to, of course, that is, and maybe even some other players ahead of the deadline. It's looking like they're destined to be sellers as we approach that trade deadline later into the spring, as we get into the latter part of the season here. And of course, a lot of this is going to be up to Fleury as well. We already know he debated not reporting to Chicago and contemplated retirement. He certainly has some control over his destination based on contract status, but would he be open to going to play with Draisaitl, McDavid, and the Oilers on a potential Stanley Cup run? I mean, obviously Edmonton is off to a good start. If they're doing even better and continuing on to be a strong team in the Western Conference, you'd have to think it'd be something that he would probably at least consider. He's only got 1 year left on his contract, and he might be looking at the money going, well, how could they make that work? Well, you know what? Considering it's the final year of his deal, if Chicago's out of it, maybe they retain enough salary that they offset here, and maybe they take Koskinen back from the Oilers and retain a bit to kind of offset, make those contracts a little bit more even. Edmonton throws in something else for their efforts, and maybe we have ourselves a trade. Like, it's quite possible that Fleury could end up with the Oilers, and it wouldn't be that difficult from a cap perspective based on what options are certainly available there. So we'll see. I mean, Chicago has other players and other moves that I'm likely thinking are probably going to happen here. So we'll have to watch that situation. But it's a little early to suggest that the Oilers are definitely interested in Fleury. That's not what this article is talking about. This is just suggesting some other options because the Oilers have been linked to goaltending upgrades for quite some time. I would be really, really shocked if Ken Holland goes into the playoffs with Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, and I think they know that they can't do that. They've already seen the good side and bad side of Koskinen early in the season, and they need an upgrade if they're going to have any chance to make any kind of a deep playoff run, regardless of how good the rest of the team is. That's been their Achilles heel and could continue to be without some additional help. Now, as we mentioned, a Jack Eichel trade, according to various sources, we're looking at Darren Dreger, Elliot Friedman, John Hoven, all talking about Eichel again today, talking about how it sounds very close to being an imminent trade, that they're far down the track. Frank Saravalli touched on it as well. So considering all these reporters that have good, connections are considered insiders, reporting on this on Twitter today, I have no doubt that things appear to be really heating up and really getting close. Now, according to Hoven, it sounds like the deal could very well be centered around Peyton Krebs and one of their defensemen, either Nick Hague or maybe even a newly signed Zach Whitecloud. I mean, one of those young defensemen would likely be in the deal. There's been some rumors about Theodore in the last few days. That was kind of talked about and started by Jesse Granger of The Athletic, the beat writer for Vegas. And I can understand why they'd have interest, but I think they'd be more likely to go for one of the younger D like Whitecloud or Hague. Now, would they want Nick Hague because he's not signed long-term? Or was that contract with Whitecloud maybe to make it more enticing to include him in the deal? I'm not really sure, but one of those two D would almost certainly be involved along with Krebs, and we're probably looking at multiple first-round picks. with conditions attached so that they can protect themselves if anything goes wrong with the Eichel surgery and he's not able to play and misses too much time, that those picks could either be deferred or delayed, or maybe they could become later round picks. I'm not sure exactly what the conditions would be, but they would have conditions attached connected to the games played of Jack Eichel. Now, of course, Vegas would have to shed some salary as well, so it's quite possible that a regular roster player, as we've talked about before, whether it be a guy like Riley Smith or Dadonov or Marchessault or somebody on that roster that's making a decent amount of money, would have to go. And if the Buffalo Sabres won't take one of those players or enough, they could be a third team involved. But right now, we had last heard that Buffalo was willing to take at least one contract back in an Eichel trade to make the money work. It pretty much has to, because the other thing too is if they shed Eichel's contract, I believe they're going to go below the cap floor. So they need to have some extra money come back anyway to bring them back to be cap compliant. So there's going to be a minimum of one NHL roster contract going back to the Sabres at a decent amount of money for sure. So like I said, it could be a variety of any of those players mentioned. I can understand why Theodore will be of interest as well. But that's not what's expected right now, but that can change. But it is believed that Vegas and Buffalo are far down the track, was the words used by Frank Saravalli today. And we very well could have an announcement just about any time. Now, it was believed as well that the Calgary Flames were still trying to stay involved, trying to stay in the hunt. We haven't heard of any other teams at the last, 11th hour here jumping in to try to make a last-minute ditch bid. But you know what? You just never know. Until a deal is done, it's not done. And another team could even swoop in. You just never know. But the Flames were still sniffing around, trying to see if they could beat out the Vegas offer, I guess. But of course, that's what's the rumored deal. Of course, we don't know exactly where things are at, but as of today, there's, like I said, tons of talk. So you have to think things are getting really close. So I would imagine the Sabres are probably not going to be hit with a grievance from Eichel and his agents just yet. They'll probably let this play out for at least a couple more days to see where this goes and if a deal can be struck before that ends up happening. But like I said, they want to get it done to avoid that. If Eichel can get his surgery here very, very soon, then there's still a chance that he can be available for the Olympics and then be available for that last good stretch of the season going into the playoffs. So we'll see where this goes, but it's looking more and more again like we're going to see Eichel to Vegas, and the deal could be completed in just about any time. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed down below in the comment section. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.